Leadership and legacy. The progress of women during the Civil War. The Civil War was a time of growing leadership and future legacies for women all around the United States.
Lives of the American women were shaped by a set of ideas that historians call the culture of true womanhood. As men worked away from home in shops, offices, and factories, women devoted their lives to create a clean, comfortable, nurturing home for their husbands and children.
Their households were private, feminized living spaces, and before the Civil War, work for most women was in their own homes. They were expected to cook and clean to make the home comfortable for the family and presentable for guests.
From an early age, females learned to cook, clean, sew, and raise children, domestic duties that gave women a supposed elevated position in society. In the 19th century, most Americans assumed that there was a natural order in society which placed men and women in totally different worlds. Society didn't support or see women as equals to men.
Women in the 19th century were very isolated from the pyramid of society. They were considered equal to slaves or even worse, seen as property. They couldn't own property, keep or control any money that she herself had made. They couldn't bring any lawsuit to court or make a contract. But worst of all, if divorced, women could not take custody of their own children, property, or anything that she had originally owned.
In 1848, the first Women's Rights Convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, with the signing of the Declaration of Sentiments after 2 days of discussion. 68 women and 32 men signed. As talk spread around, a war started to conspire, and in 1861 the Civil War began.
It was a bloody fight between the Union and the now separated states of the South called the Confederacy. The Union, which had President Lincoln on their side, fighting against the Confederacy, not only to abolish slavery, but preserve the Union. The fight was like no other, and over 600,000 people lost their lives in the process.
The Civil War was a big turning point for women and their roles in society. Once the war broke out, men from all over the country joined ranks, leaving jobs and duties behind that women quickly filled. They turned their attention to the world outside of the home. There were many important women playing roles in the Civil War, such as nurses, spies, soldiers, Civil War activists, advocates, and promoters of women's suffrage. They were engaged in supplying the troops with food, medical supplies, clothing, and even money through fundraising. Others took directly to caring to the wounded, treating the sick, and ensuring the health of the soldiers. Women were definitely a big contributor to the war effort.
During the Civil War, many women became abolitionists and fought silently on the sidelines. One such woman was Susan B. Anthony. Susan was a key figure in the women's rights movement and was co-founder of the first women's temperance movement. Another inspirational woman abolitionist was Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Stanton was an early leader in the women's rights movement who brought the women's suffrage movement to life during the Declaration of Sentiments Convention. Both of them showed that women could serve violently in the army, therefore an inability to serve in the army was not grounds to prohibit women's suffrage.
One of the most well-known nurses was Clara Barton. She began her work as a nurse in the Battle of Bull Run after she established an agency that provided supplies to soldiers in the field. She often worked on the sidelines, aiding soldiers and wounded civilians on either side. Nurses during the Civil War directly cared for the wounded and treated the sick to ensure the troops would be healthy for battle. Thousands of women in the North and South joined volunteer long gates and signed up to work as nurses during the war.
Other than nurses, some women found jobs as soldiers. Women fought out of a sense of patriotism to help eradicate slavery, to earn money, and to escape a difficult or unsatisfying home life. Others wanted to accompany family members into battle instead of enduring separation. However, because of being a soldier was a job run by men, many women disguised themselves to join. Women from both sides chopped off their hair, bounded their chest under heavy clothing, traded in their dresses for guns, and fought for the side they believed in. They risked imprisonment if they were caught.
The first woman known to disguise herself was Frances L. Clowen. She was a farmer's wife in the 19th century who couldn't bear being away from her husband. Fighting for the Union, Frances was only wounded 3 times out of the 18 battles she fought in, and captured once. Over the years, there were over 400 documented cases of women who fought as soldiers in the war. Disguised as men, they fought alongside others for their cause.
Many women volunteered to help in the war effort, but not all were on the front lines. Information about the enemy was a key weapon on war, and hundreds of women spied for the Union and Confederacy, such as Rose O'Neal Greenhow. Rose was a leader in Washington society and was one of the most well-known spies
in the Civil War.
By 1865, the war came to an end with lives lost on both sides. With the defeat of the Southern Confederacy, the Civil War's lasting effects include abolishing the institution of slavery in America and firmly redefining the United States as a single, indivisible nation. Over the 6 years, women began to realize that their own legal political rights had been neglected. Although the majority of women were forced to return to their traditional domestic roles, this period marked a significant turning point in women's history.
Following legacies left a mark on society that can never be forgotten. The women's rights movement had been gathering a following shortly before the war, and it resumed after the war's conclusion. Another was the image of female empowerment. During wartime, this brought the movement new energy.
Women were now getting recognition, as when President Andrew Johnson wrote a letter praising Union spy Sarah Thompson, calling her women of the highest respectability. Clara Barton, also called the Angel of the Battlefield, used her war experience to establish the American Red Cross.
It was the first time in America that women played a significant role in a war effort. Women in the U.S. found their voices and stood up for their own political rights.
Ever since the war, women began to get involved in government service, industry, and public schools. The Civil War gave women an opportunity to be involved in national affairs and function with a type of independence foreign to most of them. Many women saw the war as a source of freedom from her strict home. Women had a chance to control their own lives, earning their own money, and managing their own finances. Some women were no longer complacently filling the roles they had filled before the war.